ideas forum. I was just telling the people who are backstage here, who knows how good this live stream is going to come out. But I am recording this just in case it all goes to hell in a handbasket and is terrible and people can't hear or echoes or whatever. For me, it's all working wonderfully. So we'll see. We'll see how it ends up working. As you know, I'm Clint. I run the Ziti TVs on here on Friday, and we're going to do this ideas forum, which is a little new for us. The idea behind it, oh boy, haha, is to give an opportunity for the people who are using OpenZiti to just show up, offer up some ideas, talk about them, try to influence the direction of the project, explain why it's so important and how it would benefit the project, and then ideally, get the project staffed, or even better, decide to take on the effort yourself and contribute back to the project. So that is the Ideas Forum. I even made a nice little slide to show the news. And with that said, I do have a bunch of people who are online, which I'm going to flip over to now, like this, and say hi to everybody. Hi, everybody. So these are the people who are coming in. And if I pause for a moment, it's because I'm admitting people. I don't need any Zoom bombers, so I have the whole admit people turned on. Yeah, so this is a free forum. I'm going to start off by just rattling out all of the people who have cameras on, because I can tell they're all NetFoundry employees, the people who are behind the OpenZiti project. We got Jeff in the upper left here. You got me, you got Andrew, you got Q or Quigley or Michael, you got Steven, and then we have Edward, we got Dave Hart, we got Paul Lorenz, and Eugene Kobyakov. Welcome, everybody. All right. I think we just get right into it. Anybody, before I start, does anybody want to throw anything on the table? Okay, love it. So we'll just get right into the meat and potatoes of it. Looks like Philip was able to admit himself. Philip also works for NetFoundry. So strong showing from the NetFoundry people. All right, here's our very first item list. We have 4 things. We have Kelvin, who is joining us, I believe, from somewhere around New Zealand, maybe even in New Zealand. So thank you for showing up so late, if you are showing up very late for your time. And Kelvin is better known, I think, as around the Discourse Forum. Hopefully everybody has been paying attention to the sorts of things that Kelvin has been doing out there, committing or contributing back to the community. So I want to say thank you, Kelvin, because lots of times you're able to answer, particularly Markham, I think, right around your time zone. Makes it a lot easier for us in the U.S. to have somebody out there who can answer people who are in the APAC region of the world. A long time ago, Kelvin started using OpenZiti and came up with a nice edition of OpenZiti. Let me throw that on the screen now, which is for the certificate store in Windows. Now, when I got around to developing a fair bit of the way the Ziti Desktop Edge for Windows works, I'm going to admit somebody again. When I got around to developing it, we have been using files on the file system. And the way the Ziti Desktop Edge for Windows works is it puts a special file that we call our identity file into a special location. In this case, it goes into the system profile, which nests itself into the Windows subdirectory down deep. So accessing that file is a real pain. Some people need to do that. Most people really don't need to do that. But Kelvin had this issue out here where he integrate better with something like the Windows Certificate Store. So Kelvin, I don't know if you can come off a mute and talk a little bit about this. I don't know much about it myself. I have looked into things along these lines, but I have not actually integrated with it.
Yeah, okay. Hope you can hear me. Good morning, all.
Yep.
It's 5 a.m. over here. And so, yep, hi. Hey, yeah, so effectively, when I started playing with Ziti, I've got a use case. Basically, I've got an OT network or a customer. I'm a provider, an MSP. And we have a customer with an OT network. And it's currently the traditional RDP with some duo two-factor authentication And the use case, really what I want to do is be able, well, my use case is I want to be able to make it kind of easy to deploy. And when Windows are joined to the domain, it's got its own certificate hierarchy if you enable it, and rolling it out and considering we're using certificates for the use of Ziti was, hey, this could be a really quick, easy way to enable auto-enrollment with third-party CA, kind of been playing through with that a little bit. And this here kind of would be using the certificate store as the source of truth, as opposed to having another certificate sitting beside it. And that would be fully managed by Microsoft or through the Windows CA. And with the use of, I don't know who else it did, when they pulled through and say, hey, this is how you can connect to AD, was kind of my next problem, which would be how it would auto update if you're external to, having that external CA outside the Microsoft domain. So this basically kind of was what I wanted to do, was thinking about how do I make it really easy to roll this out to hundreds or thousands of people without having too much overhead and it be able to look after itself. So that's kind of why I got here. And I traditionally have Microsoft as my customer base. I do a few things with Linux, nothing with Mac, unfortunately, but it's really kind of, can we use the native OS stores for a third-party CA was my question, really.
Yeah, and so right now, my understanding of where this works is there's some Microsoft thing called the certificate that we can potentially access and pull keys and certificates from. Has anybody ever used certificates purpose?
It's two different items. You're talking about where the certificates are stored on the local machine and how this are pushed down by something like Active Directory. So when you join the Active Directory, you can push down certificates from a centralized CA down to machines that are part of the actual domain.
And that comes in like a PKS 12 format?
Yes, it does. And it gets pushed to the computer that's in the Active Directory domain and pushed to the local store, and it can either be the user, so it can follow the user, or it can follow the machine. So I would suspect that right now we're looking at the machine because that's the way we store our identity. We store it as a machine on the whole. We could try to follow the user, but that's sort of a different, but still accessing it is still on the local machine, and it is inside of the certificate store, which again is accessible directly through things like PowerShell, direct command OS. You can build that certificate as long as you have permission to do so. And that would be determined by the Windows domain that's pushing down the certificates to the machine.
And that's actually a really good point about it being tied to the machine and not so much the identity of the user that is logged in. That's one of those questions that we've talked about internally quite a bit is, can we support a multi-logged in user setup with a tunneler? Right now, I would assert that that is not a situation that we would probably ever allow. This is a host access. When you run a tunneler, you have a privileged process running on the machine, and anything on that machine that can access that port has access to whatever service is being served by that tunneler. So doing it at the machine level is without a doubt the way I would think that this would. And it sounds like it would be relatively easy to be able to, we need a process that would go in, be able to configure a particular key somehow in this store, pull it out and put it in the place that we expect. So right now, already extract the key, which is important in the certificate, from a particular identity. We have ways of referencing a key and a cert in that special JSON file I talked about. So we just have to put that key and that cert in a special place, right? And we could actually do that right now. Now that I think about it, it's just the ergonomics behind it would all be god awful because it would all just be kludged together, But you could.
It would be better if you could, as the process starts, check to see if the certificate exists in the store and read it directly out of the store versus trying to
Yeah, but that's what I was talking about with you
Okay.
need a key. You need to know where to go look for that
Yes.
particular cert. So you need some
So for
configuration.
that, for a machine thing out of Active Directory, the certificate's just machine name. So you just need to look up the machine name, see if that's in the, so in the Windows certificate store, there's the folders in there, and the certificate is always in the personal folder of that. So there is a common location that will be. It's just a matter of going and get it. I suppose where it comes to the, not the trickiness per se, is that Microsoft will roll that certificate over every time when it's up for renewal, the next time the machine checks into the domain through a group policy update, it will roll that certificate. So there is a potential that while the tunnel is running, that certificate gets rolled over. But you can, Microsoft does raise an event ID or a notification of the OS that says, hey, the certificate's just been rolled. So there's probably a couple of factors to that, and that is basically, one, obviously go check for it when it starts up, and the second half of that is check for it being rolled over during its use. Would be the two things, but kind of also, kind of saying, hey, we're not really looking to entertain the a user level kind of certificate. I'd kind of almost like to see us revisit that again, solely because if I have users with machines that are that again are not tied to the machine, as in the shared machine, or you rotate machines around, some services you're wanting to actually allocate to a user, not necessarily to a machine, would make it more versatile, would be my view.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that for sure. I think there are some devils in those details for sure. And I would think that that's the kind of stuff that I personally would appreciate having input on the issue. Where and how you might accomplish that. Having more than one tunnel running, more than one ZD Desktop Edge for Windows is just not going to not that's not going to happen anytime soon, because the way it will work is it'll create a network interface locally, and that network interface is then available. So um, we could configure it for a particular user, the user who is logged in, but then if another user logs in, there would almost certainly be some clashing going on, right? And that's the use case that we don't have good support for, is two users being logged in at the exact same time on the exact same machine, particularly in Windows.
Yeah, I would think you would have to basically, if some is basically who the interactive user, in my view, figure out who the interactive user is, and again, Windows raises events for that, and then basically almost disable the other one that's there. The certificate basically disable that identity per se. So when people lock the machine, or not necessarily lock the machine, but switch user or whatnot, there's probably a set of event IDs we can monitor. Again, it's probably getting agent specific, right? It's I don't know what Windows does.
Yeah, the worry I would
To do
have
that,
there is
but
terminal services and multiple users on a server.
yep,
We do have
yep,
people who use it in a server, but
yep.
that's all good to know and good stuff. Comment says, wouldn't each circuit that's created be tied to an individual user ID? Um, so yeah, the circuit that gets created is tied to an individual user ID, but the challenge with a tunneling based approach is the tunneler is a privileged process on the machine itself. And so if you send traffic to the DNS name or the IP address that is currently configured for that particular service, you don't have any authentication inbound. You have the zero trust connection from the tunneler outbound. So from one side of the zero trust tunnel to the other side, it's all based on the ID. But whoever shows up on that local machine on that local IP would be able to send traffic to that particular service. And that's just how tunneling and zero trust host access works.
Yep, that's fine.
Yep. All right.
I would
I don't
mention
know which mute button is the right mute button. So if I have to cough, I have unfortunately taken ill. So I have to cough. I'm going to try to cough in that direction, and hopefully it's not too terribly loud.
I
Cool.
just wanted to mention one thing for this scenario, which I do like. We would have to put in very large writing that the machines would have to be joined to the domain for this to work without using Ziti, because otherwise you would get into a chicken and egg scenario where you're wanting to use a certificate for the machine that's issued by AD, but you can't because it hasn't joined the domain yet. So the machine must be already joined to the domain in order to consume the certificate to have Ziti consume it. Otherwise, how do you join the domain? Or you'd have to come up with some sort of bootstrap methodology.
If I could be so bold as to ask, would anybody else please take notes and go make that comment on the issue? I am pulling all the levers here, and I don't have enough fingers in order to keep this car on the road.
I'll put a comment in
That would be much
this issue.
appreciated, Ed. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Well, I
Calvin,
suppose some
anything
of that.
that you could add as well that we've discussed here, that would be super useful as well.
Yeah, that's all right. Again, I suppose it comes down to that comment about the documentation. Again, that is on the documentation. Hey, here's how you would do it as your how-to or your recipe. Could follow through that. So yeah, I mean, that was my thought, just basically how do I roll this out to, lots and lots of people? And yeah, just that bootstrapping. I think I've already got another issue in there around that. Currently at the moment, if I want to use the Windows certificate store, I've got to export the certificate. One of the features of being in the certificate store is that you can make the private key not exportable. Sorry if you can hear that. It's my dog in the background. He's getting excited in the morning. Yeah, so that would also help in the protection. That would help in the protection of it. And yeah, if you do export that key at the moment, I don't know whether it's been resolved, but you have to use third party to extract those certificates to import into the tunneler. Yeah, which I think is another open issue for. I'm not sure if that's been closed yet as well.
I don't
and that's about me, I think.
Yep. That's great.
That's me.
Welcome. Always nice to put a face. Thank you for turning the cam on. Thanks again for your comments in the discourse. It's been great having you in the community. Thanks for showing up. Anything that anybody else wants to add on top of this before we move to the next one? Okie doke. Let's go to the next one. Everybody's so quiet, letting me just drive the train. All right. Next up, we have Andrew Za, FIPS Encryption. No linked issue. That's okay. It's our first time around. We'll give everybody a pass on that. But if you could put issues in, that would be helpful for us to take notes. I'm going to actually, maybe somebody else can take notes if I'm not taking notes on this, so that we can capture anything interesting. But Andrew, do you want to talk about FIPS?
Yeah, hey y'all. Yeah, I'm not sure what I would put in the issue currently. Just wanted to give you guys an update. So as part of our work for the government, we are trying to meet FIPS compliance, both on like OpenSSL and with our programs that we're running. So I was able to get OpenZiti version 0.26.7 building with the Go Boring fork of the Golang. of Golang. So I couldn't get anything past that build because they're not updated to 1.19. So that's on 1.18.8 B7. That's pretty much where we're kind of like at right now. So we're just kind of waiting on Go's release cycle, I guess every 5 to 7 weeks they put out a new Go Boring release. So maybe end of December.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing here is, in order to be FIPS compliant for like the router and the controller, we need to use the Go Boring fork for TLS. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes. So yeah. So that's a fork of Golang that uses Boring crypto, which has been it's so that specifically, not all of Boring SSL, but Boring crypto in particular, is FIPS 140-2 compliant.
140 dash what?
-2.
All right.
Do you know if they have intention to push that through 140-3?
I have not been looking at 140-3, so that's like another set. That's going to be its own whole thing. And actually, Chad knows a lot more about this than I do.
Well, 140-3 is the evolution. 140-2 will be phased out over the next. I haven't tracked what the exact dates are, but 140-3 3 is the current, and 140-2 certified modules are grandfathered for some certain amount of time. So we have to go back and look, and it's it's very relevant as to future proofing whether or not that module intends to be pushed through on 140-3 as well.
Yeah, I haven't looked into it specifically, but if boring crypto is good for 140-2, I can't imagine that it's going to be any different for 140-3. I just haven't checked it specifically.
From what I found is that boring may be compliant, but it hasn't been validated. So I don't know how that matters for acceptance in the.
Yeah, the question is, has the module received a certification, or is it just stating that it's compliant with the?
That's what I couldn't find. I don't think it was certified.
Yeah, so the boring SSL page does say that the core library boring crypto has been FIPS validated.
Okay.
And I can put a link to that in chat here.
Oh, it was okay. It's actually a Google project. Okay.
Well, that's really cool. I think it's really cool. Was there anything to it? Any other than the 1.18 versus 19? Gotcha.
Actually, no. So we haven't actually started running it yet because we're also still learning about OpenZiti and trying to figure out how we want to do the Dockerization process. But as far as building it, it was very simple. We just built this version of Golang that uses the boring crypto libraries instead, and then use that Go to build OpenZiti. Gotcha. So other than the version issue, there seems to be everything else was flawless.
That's cool, and so that gets the overlay network components prepared. What about the edge components, the SDK for say Go or Java or the Ziti Edge tunnel? Have you had a chance to look at those at all?
We have not, but it would be a similar process of building those with a tool that uses those cryptographic libraries.
So for Ziti Edge tunnel, you can build it with OpenSSL dynamic linking, and you can drop in your FIPS compliant library that implements OpenSSL interface, like either OpenSSL itself that's FIPS, or like stuff like Wolf SSL that is also FIPS. They have the OpenSSL compatibility layer. That's in theory. We haven't tested it because we didn't need to, but that's a path.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that's exciting. Anything else to add on that?
Chad, did you have anything else, or did I pretty much cover it?
Oh, yeah, thanks, Andrew. I just, yeah, I mean, regarding the issue, maybe some of these ideas may result in some issues we can log. I don't think for FIPS there is an issue. I think it's really just want to contribute back, to the community and let you guys know updates. I think you guys also, the dynamic linking of OpenSSL libraries, I think is a great idea. In terms of the edge, right? Like, so yeah, so we've been working to try to get FIPS on like the core component of Ziti, and with the edge devices, right? We do also work to build, like, for example, the JVM with Bouncy Castle. But given that OpenZiti's entire model depends on encryption, we just find it very important to make sure that, for our work anyways, that we are able to, essentially use the approved crypto, libraries essentially. It really helps us with our OpenZiti messaging. So Andrew's he's done a great job, and I just wanted him to be able to communicate back to the community. And if there are issues that we can open up to improve, I would be happy to, log those and
yeah, that's awesome. Much appreciated. The only issue I would say is document how to build the binaries with the boring Go Or, like if it was me, I might make a Docker container that already had the Go binary or compiler built into it and just compile it with that Docker container and say, now you're FIPS certified type of thing. I think that would be useful. Does anybody Eugene doesn't like that idea.
Well, when you say you're certified, you're not certified. If you just build it, you're not certified.
Ready, compliant? Is that what is it? What's the term?
I think it's you may be compliant, but to get certification. So I have a question. When you do this, does it link dynamically against the boring SSL shared library? Or is it builds it in statically like the normal Go does?
I believe that is built in statically. So I was using Go tool NM to check the I made like a little like test program that just said like hello worlds that pulled in the net libraries, and then I looked at the tags using Go tool NM. So I'm pretty sure that it's statically linked in there with the Go boring library.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that factors into the certification process, because I think to be certified you have to load stuff dynamically, but I could be wrong. Because otherwise you have to then certify each individual piece that you build, which is probably not a great path. You know what I mean?
There's a question in the chat related to end-to-end encryption. I've been curious on how that plays into overall FIPS also. Early on, we had suggested to one user that they run Ziti and then run their own FIPS compliant connections over Ziti. And I believe that was dismissed, but I'd like to get some of your guys' expertise on those kind of options. Like, does it have to be FIPS compliant every single place, or can there be any kind of mix of it?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. So if we did, this Go with boring SSL or Go boring, and we did FIPS for the connections to edge routers and the controller, then encryption that happens inside those channels may not need to be FIPS compliant. Like, imagine if we ditched end-to-end encryption and sent plain text over that would be certainly FIPS compliant, right? Because all the connections are FIPS. And then encryption just adds extra stuff. But you could also do, FIPS inside the connections as well. So I haven't read enough about FIPS, and I don't really want to, just because it's very dense to understand what they're actually asking.
Yeah, that's been our side as well. It's a lot of stuff. It's really unfun, and we're kind of like learning about all of this stuff currently as well, because we're trying to get our FedRAMP certification. So yeah, very, very fun stuff.
It sounds like it. All right. Anything else before we move on?
I would say maybe just Clint on this one, right? I mean, do we want to create an issue and collaborate, or do we want to kind of have specific items marked as issues? Because I think we're going to continue to to learn, and part of it too is like we have an entire stack of FIPS, right? So we do run OpenZiti in a container, but we have the base operating system, FIPS. We have our containers that are FIPS. We have our Golang, that's FIPS, right? So there's kind of like multiple layers of FIPS, up and down the stack. So whether it's documentation, scripts, or anything like that, I just want to see if y'all want to track this. And
I personally think it's useful, so I don't see any reason why we wouldn't. A few years ago, I was responsible for building a snap that didn't really go anywhere for distribution. And so there's an Etsy folder that has stuff like this that could fit in there. I think just a small directory that talks about that, or just even capturing it on just an issue, is perfectly acceptable. I have a strong preference for just capturing knowledge even if it's never acted on and it's out there for somebody to come find in the future. That was the only reason why I mentioned the issue. So capturing that sort of information in some public place, I think, would be fantastic. All right. Well, let's move on to the next few issues that just came in. Chad entered a bunch of them here just a moment ago. The first one is around auditing and logging in events. What do you want to talk about, Chad?
Cool. So so we demoed to a lot of people this week, and I have to say it's a tremendous product. It was a mic drop moment. Great job, to this team on what y'all are creating, and we definitely want to help contribute and make it better, and help to contribute to its success. So things came up, right, as we're looking at operationalizing and productionizing this as a core component. Well, actually, first question I might have is somebody brought up, they said, is Ziti a play on Ziti for zero trust? And I was like, you know what? I was thinking noodles, but maybe I didn't even think of that. So I just had to ask that.
Who wants to answer that question?
Yes, both.
Yeah.
The pasta and the zero trust.
How could
Brilliant.
it be anything else, right?
I was about to say, I could have swore we covered that in our initial meeting, man. Remember the whole Italian? Yeah, ZD. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
What I really enjoy are when somebody who is in the zero trust space starts talking about ZT, and then they go and write like ZTNA, and they have exactly that moment where they're like, "Wait a minute." You're not the first, which is, I think it's always entertaining every time somebody asks that particular question, and that's also why Ziggy. Everybody's seen Ziggy, right? Like that's why Ziggy is a piece of pasta. So yeah, lots of pasta jokes around here.
Yeah, that was a mind blow moment. I was like, I didn't even realize that, but yeah, brilliant.
Brilliant. Cool.
So a few things that came up, from the cyber team, as we're looking at this is, well, one, this is a paradigm shift in terms of thought process, right, of how networks work. And the way that I kind of brought it up to them is without a solution like OpenZiti, you essentially require your entire user base to what I call BYON, or bring your own network, right? And now you're relying again just on firewalls and port blocking and things of that nature. But how is the secure transfer of data? So if we can centralize that with, the great point brought up earlier about centralized CAs, things of that nature, then that'd be great. And so, what is this?
Oh, sorry. While you were talking.
I
was bringing Ziggy up. Ziggy likes to have lots of costumes, so he's got lots of
costumes.
Oh, that's
cool.
You can go grab some on the branding page if you're interested.
Oh, I need some swag and some stickers of these little guys too. My whole laptop.
Philip's online. Philip can get you those things.
Actually, I have a stack of sticker sheets if you want to shoot me an address. I'll send you a few.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, that would be great. I'll just catch you guys too in the at some of the conferences, the open source conferences. But yeah, no, I'd love to get some stickers and pass them around to all our team. So I think it was great. I mean, I think the reception was great. Everybody's on board. They see the value, all the way from end users who are not software developers. They saw it, they got it, and all the way to our cyber team, right? And so I think questions around like, okay, well, configuring Ziti with centralized authoritative CA sources, and also some of the stuff, that's some of our work that we'll be working on here soon, is integrating Ziti with SPOF as well, for identities and such. And then some of the other cyber events that came, or questions that came up, was about auditing and logging events. So again, we're still pretty new to this, very new, right, to this project. And I wanted to see, maybe just kind of throw out that concept of, how do we, track and log, users that join and leave, and how identities are managed and such. We were a dashboard up and running, but I don't know, Andrew, was there much in terms of like auditing and logging events of what actually occurs?
Yeah, there definitely is not. And this is a great question. And it is a bit of a differentiator, I think, on the SaaS product that we have versus the open source stuff, because to do all that you need the data lake and you need to process those metrics and you need a nice dashboard and you need all that sort of thing. I don't know who was the best person to answer this, other than, I mean, like,
I was gonna say I'll chime in because, by the way, I'm the head of operations, and you're near and dear to my heart asking this question. So what I would suggest is let's get together offline and let me show you some of what we do today in the SaaS product, which is really all with data that comes out of the open source product. And I'm working more on operationalizing the open source side, but I have a really nice Elasticsearch infrastructure that I can leverage. So that's where I started. To Clint's point earlier, and I say this all the time, we have a tremendous amount of data that's available, and the team's been great at working with me on continuing to enhance the data that we get. So I can kind of take you on a tour of some of the things that we're doing, so you get an idea of the capabilities, and then we can start talking about what's next with you guys and what you want to do. Logging into the console has some of these things in it. Console development takes a lot longer, and trying to reach a broader audience than a real knock-sock operations kind of team. And so I use Grafana primarily, and import the data from, it's either raw or from our Elastic database, depending on how much work you guys have done in enrichment. Because if they do it, I don't have to. But I think you'll find it's quite extensive. And we can get to the point of, we can attribute at this point. One of the things we added that I think is awesome is the ability. Say you have, on the simple side, say you have an HT access log on a web server, and you see some kind of activity. And of course, because it's generally natted, the access that you're going to see is going to be coming from a socket that is an edge router, right? That's serving that service and coming across if you're not embedded, et cetera. We actually have in the records the socket on the edge router timestamped that made a connection. There's data in that you have to go back a couple layers in enrichment. But if you give me a timestamp and a socket, I can tell you exactly what identity did it. Right. So outside of usernames and all that sort of stuff, which of the Ziti identities that session belongs to. And that's something that's, as far as I can tell, head and shoulders above most.
And during that conversation, I just took a little tangent and fired up my NetFoundry Teams, small plug, sorry, approach for the SaaS console itself, and showed you the dashboard that we have. It's obviously it's my home account, so I only have one identity, but you can see exactly which identity did what, how much they transferred. It's really quite neat. All right, and then Paul, thank you for posting that issue, which I also popped up briefly, talking about some important events that need to be audited, and other important events that we find, like I don't know who some smart guy filed that one, and that's, I think that does that cover auditing and logging enough for the time being? Yeah.
Well, this may be rudimentary, but just given DoD circles, one of the things that's going to be absolutely necessary is not only fidelity in what we're logging, but the ability to take it out of the environment to a trusted logging facility. Like syslog, if you will.
So
that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
Eugene, do you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing around that right now? Because log shipping is something that Eugene's kind of playing with over Ziti.
Yeah, so as part of the customer request and also internal use, I'm working on Zitifying the beats set of tools and the Logstash components to Zitify connection between them in a native way without any tunnelers. So interest of that is kind of twofold. One is we use those internally to a very large extent. Those are, you know,
To
file
do what we want to do right here, right?
yeah, to get all the monitoring that we need to do, is we usually use those.
Speaking of which, metrics isn't listed there as well, but metrics are all.
Yeah, so the file beat, the metric beat, I think the two tools that we use. I don't know if anybody on the call can correct me if they can.
You're right.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so this actual week, I have the end-to-end working. So I'm about to publish an article about how we Zitified, beat self tools and the Logstash input component that takes that beats traffic.
coming to a ZD TV near you soon, I hope. Yeah. Cool.
Nice.
All right.
Can I ask a?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in addition, and I mean, there's lots of ways to view logs, both natively and internally, or externally. But one other feature that I think would be, advantageous for the end user or the end administrator would be some sort of, at a glance data visualization of the logs versus, just reading the actual raw log files with regards to endpoints and who did this and who did what at any given moment. And the only reason I say that is, within DoD circles, to use a loose term, dashboards are awesome. You know what I'm saying? So now, not that this would have anything to do with the external trusted logging facility, but as a feature of your SaaS or your open source product, it would just be nice if there was some sort of dashboard that someone could go to and just sort of get a glance at user access and what they're up to, that type of thing. That's about it.
Yeah. And we certainly have some of that today. The question would be where does it belong? How much of it belongs where? But like I said, we certainly have some discussions offline to show you what we got, and then take any feedback on that as to where things go. Because obviously, we run this for about 200 networks right now, so we're pretty good at the centralized piece of it.
Awesome.
But it would be interesting to get your feedback.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Gorman, I have a question. I know that we did the Prometheus exporter for metrics.
Yeah, that too.
Did we ship out any kind of pre-canned dashboards that are meant to go along with it as an integration up to like the Grafana dashboard hosting site?
No, it's on the list right now to engage more on the OpenZiti side with some of the same kind of things we're doing on the NetFoundry side, but just haven't gotten that far down the list yet. So it's definitely on my to-do list to engage with that and start to build a community around that piece as well. And this may be a good kickoff for that.
Yeah, I'd be keen to get on that as well. I didn't note it because I hadn't got around to checking to see what there was or wasn't around that. But yeah, it's definitely one of my questions as well.
Mike Gorman, would we do this on a ZD TV?
We certainly could, yeah.
Yeah,
And I guess the question becomes, because I think ZD TV right now, what we have is based in our SaaS infrastructure. But
it will be just how you will visualize the data that comes from an OpenZiti network.
Yeah,
so,
okay, and that's
so
fine.
I would see
we'll
it
figure
from
out language.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I don't mind showing the SaaS product on OpenZiti TV as long as it's clearly around Ziti, so.
Okay, yeah, and that's fine. We can, like I said, we can work out language and certainly we can host one.
Yeah, cool. All right.
I just one quick thing I wanted to ask, which is around the things that we're not currently emitting in terms of events. So like sort of entity change events. I'm thinking sort of first pass, we would just create additional events, sort of what we currently have, and emit those the same way we're currently emitting events. It was just spitting them out to in JSON format to a file somewhere so that you can do whatever you want with them. I didn't know if people had thoughts around if that's sufficient for most use cases, or if people are really looking for other kinds of event integration, like, some sort of WebSocket feed or some other, RabbitMQ or something like that. Just want to see if anyone had thoughts around that.
Yeah, I think the event notification is a much better model, right, than polling, and stuff. I think an event model would be really cool. And another thing I just posted in chat is, I know gRPC seems to also be, another protocol that seems to be pretty popular within the Go and, cloud native community. But I also am a big fan of like MQTT, and then also, maybe looking at other libraries like the ZMQ, right, as well, which offers a really nice kind of event-driven model. So yeah, I think that'd be awesome.
And my question on that, to a product standpoint, is it better to try to build integrations, or is it better to get the eventing right and allow, particularly on the for OpenZiti, somebody to integrate whatever they want? Because like you said, you just ran through like 4, right? And there's 40 easy that are in use in different places. And I just wonder if we go down that rabbit hole, if we'll ever get out of it, because it's so much to maintain as versions change, as protocols change, versus, the model that we've used to date is just the pushing to log and using, in our case, beats. I mean, a lot of other things can do it to tail those logs locally and then ingest them into whatever notification system you like.
Yeah, so here's my thought on that. And I was actually going to kind of bring that up as like this next topic that I listed out. Was the question I had was like maybe offering like a plugin framework, right? Where like maybe, a developer could bring in and, write in hooks, to those events. And then, just kind of build that plugin, plop it in there, and they could, essentially do what they want, right? If they want to emit it, if they wanted to go to Kafka or, whatever, that might be a way to approach that. I didn't know if Ziti offered like a plugin framework, that, but that might be.
Yeah, it's got a plugin framework for the events, and right now there's really just one sort of consumer of that event framework, which is the thing that takes things and spits it to JSON in a file. But to set up in a sort of generic fashion where you can register listeners for whatever style of event you want to get. And as we've been adding more events, we've just been adding additional hooks to that sort of generic event framework. Okay. So it'd be pretty straightforward. The only kind of downside to that approach is that with Go, it's a little harder to do plugins in a nice way, right? With something with like Java, you can specify a class name in a config file and have it pull it in if the jar file is in the right spot. With Go, you've kind of got to rebuild everything. It's not a huge deal, but it's a little bit more of a pain to get nice integrations in that style.
The other way
You do have plugin framework, right? We can load dynamically to some extent.
Yeah, there's a couple of things, but it's
they're all
just
wonky.
not quite as nice.
They're all a bit wonky. Yeah. I'm gonna say it's 11:49 here, and generally I was gonna try to keep this meeting to an hour. There are 2 or 3 more topics. One popped in from Steven, so I'm gonna consider that maybe next time, unless we blast through these other ones. Chad, do you consider the traffic capture and monitoring question addressed, or do you want to go into that some?
Yeah, I think we could probably, push some of these other things off, because I know they're really big topics and we're trying to learn. And I think there's been some really great ideas. I've been taking notes here, whether they're issues, things that we need to review on our side, contributions that we could make, as well to the source code, and anything that we could do. But I think these are kind of like really high level. I would say maybe just the only other thing is about like scaling and single point of failure, with the architecture. That might be just kind of another, but I think these topics are, might come up over and over again, Clint. So actually, I was going to say, if you want to get to Steven, we'll just maybe hit these on the next time.
Well, it's, yeah, and we can, that was going to actually be the way I closed this too, which is perhaps we should simply schedule another one sooner rather than later. It is December, so realistically, there's probably only 2 weeks left of this entire month before it just evaporates. So we can decide. That's why I was do it next month. And if people wanted to do it sooner, I could schedule one sooner. And I could do it on a day that's not a Friday, if that's what we want. I don't particularly have a strong feeling there. I just don't want people to have to wait for an entire month if a particular set of topics come up. Maybe bi-weekly is a better cadence for now, or not. I don't even know. So as far as the single point of failure and scaling, Paul, I think you're probably best to address that real quick. Could you talk a little bit about that?
So yeah, the single point of failure right now, the main one is the controller, and that's being worked on right now. Is the actually let me so there's an HA project board. You want to kind of track progress a little bit. Let's post that into the chat to find it. But we're getting close with it. So I gotta find my Zoom window now. There we go. So yeah, we're getting close with HA. We're at the point now where you can spin up a cluster, and the model is distributed over the cluster, so you can talk to any controller cluster and make model changes, add services, enroll things, update policies, all that stuff, and it gets distributed across the cluster. From a sort of data plane perspective, I think we're in relatively good shape there as well. So taking a simple approach to start off with of whichever controller you initiate a circuit on owns that circuit and will manage routing updates for it and all that stuff. The only thing the main things that are left is some additional testing and documentation, and there's some edge pieces changing how we manage API sessions and sessions to make those turn those into bearer tokens. And once that's done, we can I'm already working on sort of fabric level testing where we don't have to worry about the edge so much, and just make sure that all works properly. And I'll do some additional testing with the edge stuff, and then we can start rolling things out to beta testers.
There are also some other things that are needed, I think, especially inside stuff that's based on SDK. So if you have multiple controllers that sit behind the same DNS name with like multiple IP addresses, we needed some work to try to connect to multiple ones instead of the first one on the list.
Yeah, there's remains to be seen how much work we need to do on it.
If I could sum all of this up, it's like it is reaching a conclusion relatively quickly. Is that true? Or is it still?
Hopefully, I mean, unless we run into some, standard sort of engineer disclaimer, right? Like unless we hit something.
You can wave your hands.
Yeah, but I mean, it's been going well, and we've made a lot of good progress, and it feels like we're getting close. So I guess that's what I'd say.
Great. Chad, does that give you enough information? Great. Cool. Thanks for taking us on a tour of the office too. That was nice.
I had to plug into my power.
All right, and we have 5 minutes left. Stephen, there's no chance that you're going to get this done in 5 minutes, is there?
No, I can. Yeah. It's a simple ask.
Right.
The City Edge tunnel now has Linux packaging for Debs and RPM based distributions. So we support Ubuntu, Red and all versions of Red Hat, I think at this point since 7. None of the other Ziti binaries currently that I'm aware of have distribution-based packaging. We work around that fact in our own in-house automation. And I know that for the Ansible collection, a role was contributed for a customer to be able to manage their own binaries, and they have to jump through similar hoops in terms of installing and managing updates and upgrades to the binary. So really here is to kind of put it you know, if anybody else has come in the community has had similar experience with working with the Ziti controller, router, and all other binaries that you install, and to see if there's any value in pursuing packaging for the rest of the Ziti binaries.
I would certainly think so. Like, I don't see any issue whatsoever. I think installing and keeping it up to date via your package manager is probably ideal. But it's like you said, Stephen, it's just work that hasn't been done yet. So that would be a great contribution from somebody who's interested. I don't know if there's any input from anybody else, or if I nailed it.
And I don't know from a toolkit standpoint if Go makes that easy somehow. If it's somehow, if there are projects out there that say, you know, here's a Go, and it can kind of discover dependencies and whatever else. I mean, obviously they're statically built. So
Go makes it easy because there is really no dependencies.
You just package up the executable and go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a single executable usually. The thing is that we have at least 3 components that you want to package, whether you package them
Currently,
package
that's all merging together relatively soon, if I remember right, Paul.
Yeah, next release that'll be all the existing executables will still be available, but you'll be able to run the controller and the router from the Ziti binary. I think the main thing you got to watch out for is like libc dependencies. I know when I like build things locally with a newer libc and then try to run it on a like older cloud, that breaks. So that's the main thing you got to watch out for. Is
you just got to build on a real.
The only piece that links to libc is the PKCS11 stuff.
Is what stuff?
The PKCS.
I think the rest of the
okay.
I think the rest of the Go avoids libc specifically. It's just they re-implemented a lot of system calls to not go through libc.
and I know that the edge router, for example, also communicates with like systemd resolved, right?
Yeah, but it does that just via calling out to the executable. It doesn't there's no like dependency there.
Yeah,
like
there's no package, the package level dependency though, expressed in the dependency tree of the package.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, but those are built in, right? Those are not. They don't require to have anything on the post.
I think it's just expressing like that the fact that if you were to call out, you know, the thing wasn't there, so something would break potentially. Right? It'll still run. It just will have a runtime error.
Okay.
Can do, Clint. Thank you for giving me the few minutes there.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for showing up. We're right on the hour, which I find astonishing. I appreciate everybody's time. Thanks for showing up so early, Kelvin. Hopefully, you know, when the hours change, you'll get an hour back. I don't know if it'll go the worst way or the better way, but thanks again, everybody. And I'm going to wrap this up. Consider the stream complete. Well, I got to go over and find the live stream and stop. But thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much, all.